So today we are going to talk about upgrades to the Black Scout Survival Flashlight in collaboration with Thrunite. Now, there has been up to now 5 versions of this flashlight with small incremental improvements. The question I think we need to answer is, do the improvements in this version justify buying yet another, flashlight? But also, how does this compare to some of its closest competitors? Well, that's exactly what we're going to do today, so stick around and let's get right to it. So before we get started, let me explain what we're going to do in this video. There will be 3 sections. The first section will be explaining the flashlight in its entirety to somebody who has never seen it before. If you already know what this flashlight is all about, you can skip to section 2, where I tell you the exact improvements from version 4 to version 5. And then in section 3 is where we're going to compare this flashlight to some of its closest competitors. All right, so those chapters will be listed down below, so feel free to skip straight to those if that's what you're interested in. But for everyone else, let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so what you need to know about this flashlight. First of all, what kind of flashlight is it? This very much is a purpose-driven tool. Now, it comes with a whole series of accessories, and that includes a red filter for help in night vision scenarios, as well as a very, very aggressive strike bezel. And one of the cool things about this flashlight is that these options are both removable and exchangeable. So that is something you don't see all that often in the flashlight world, and I think is one of the biggest reasons why I like it personally, because it adds a lot to its versatility, which we will get to. Now, first thing we need to talk about, like we have done in many other flashlight videos, is talk about the quality. And Thrunite does make a very, very good product. They really, really do. So far, everything I've touched from them has been excellent, and this is no exception. Everything is in place. The threading is properly lubricated. It does not gritty in any way. The battery was in good shape when I got it. The clip is nice and springy. Everything looks good on this flashlight. So it's like every other flashlight that hits the mark, it's going to get a 3 out of 5 on its quality. Now, moving on, we got to get to the user interface. And this is where they have done it so right. In so many ways, I think this is probably the best user interface that Thrunite has ever produced. You know what? The throwers, the catapults, maybe equal, but definitely one of the better ones. So it's really well done on this, starting with the tail cap, which has a very firm press mechanical tail switch. So you really have to mean it when you press the button. And I love that about this flashlight. I don't like it, I love it. I don't have to ever lock this flashlight out because I basically have to mean what I'm doing when I press the button. And the only output I get is the turbo mode, which is over 2600 lumens. And it's able to produce that because it uses an SST 70. And what that means is, well, look at the size of the emitter. It's big. It's really, really big. So it's going to release a lot of light very quickly. And that's kind of what it's meant to do with that tail switch. But they have built into it a lot of very usable daily features, such as quick access to the lowest mode, which is their Firefly mode. So all you have to do from that is to hold press the side switch button, and you will get your Moonlight mode. Now, while we are talking about Moonlight, we may as well show Lockout because that's kind of how you get to it. So hold press for Moonlight while it's in the on position. Hold press again, it will turn off. You'll now notice the red light showing through the button. That means it is locked out. It also has something I've not seen in many other flashlights. It has what they call a double lockout feature. So in addition to being locked out, you can then press the tail switch, and now you'll have a solid red light. So even if you press this or hold press, nothing will happen. You then have to click it once and then hold press to unlock the flashlight. Excessive? Yes. But is it a great option to give people? Oh yeah. Awesome. I love that. Very nicely done. Now let's turn it off from there. Now a single press from the side switch will give you the last memorized mode of 3. So there are 3 modes in the middle: low, medium, high. So there's high, there you go. And there's the 3 modes. Back to low. Now, personally, I would normally leave this in low mode, and I'll tell you why in a minute. So that's the basic user interface. Really, really well done. It also has strobe, which is a triple press from the side switch. Yeah, we'll go into that in a minute. I would have preferred, because this is not an easy to access feature, that 3 press would be SOS or beacon mode, which is basically a blink and then off, and then a blink and then off, that kind of thing. But unfortunately, it does not have that. Still, with the fact that it has access to turbo immediately, access to the lowest mode immediately, this is a solid 4 out of 5 stars when it comes to user interface, and I think is as good as you can expect when you're talking about a self-defense, combat-driven flashlight, which very much that was the idea of the design. And so I don't want to take anything from that. They did a very good job incorporating EDC-style features with a very much self-defense flashlight. So really, really well done by Thrunite and Black Scout Survival. Now moving on to output, this is one of the brightest flashlights that I've ever seen using this battery type, 18650. Like, it's not even close. This is really impressive. So the maximum light intensity for this flashlight is 16,000 with a maximum output in lumens of 2676. Now that will only last for 2 minutes, which is not surprising because that amount of light is going to generate a massive amount of heat. But still, I think it's going to do what it needs to do when you need it from that aspect. So a solid 5 out of 5 in output. It doesn't get much better in a flashlight using this power source. All right, now let's talk briefly about run times. So they, in addition to having really good output, it also has ridiculously good run times. 50 days on Firefly mode, which is this one here, which is plenty usable, by the way, in the dark, which I did actually this morning, and it worked great. So no problems with that. You'll probably never have to charge the flashlight if you do that. And there's nothing here to cause parasitic drain, so it's going to last a very long time when it's in its off position as well. All right, so there we go. Now, working on versatility here, which is our next category, there's a lot to say about this. Well, it's very much a tactical self-defense style light, but they have that side light that lets you do quite a bit more. It does have the ability to tail stand, which I think is a nice added bonus. And one thing they have done, and I'll just briefly show this, is they have added a double-sided clip. How practical is this? This is probably the heaviest flashlight anyone should ever try to attach to the end of their hat. Like, I keep my hat pretty well cinched, and it's pushing it. So I think it's wishful thinking to have this on a light this big. It's something I like, but I'm not sure everyone else will. Still, as far as my rating is concerned, it still gives it a solid 3 out of 5 from that regard. Well done. And then value. Let's get to the value part. So this flashlight, its maximum price is $75, but currently is running 20% off with a coupon on Amazon. So that brings it down to $61. At that price, with all of these features that it comes with, the filter, the crown bezel, the case, and all the spare parts. Oh yeah, and this too, I guess. This is a very, very good value. I mean, this is a 5 out of 5. I don't see how I could rate it lower. It gives you everything you want from a flashlight of this style. And you're not going to get much better for that price at $61. It might seem like a lot, but you're also getting a lot. This is a serious flashlight for a very specific purpose. So well done to Thrunite on this regard. It's going to be hard to beat. Now, before we move on to comparisons, which we're about to do, I'd like to focus on the fact that this is something I'd never noticed they have done, since. They have included a spare silicone cover for its USB charger. Okay, so both flashlights have one, but this one has USB Type-C. So really, really well done by them. Probably should have mentioned it before, but definitely pretty awesome. Now, let's take all this away and let's talk about the differences between version 4 and version 5. Okay, so that's what we're going to work on now. So version 4, the first thing you can tell right away is finish. The finish is quite a bit different. This is kind of a reflective black and frankly is very slippy. It's not the easiest thing to grip onto, even when your hands are dry, but if your hands are sweaty, it's way, way worse. This is fantastic in comparison, and it feels like it's a thinner coating because I'm getting much more bite from these cutouts on the handle. It is interesting to note, though, that they did not put the same texturing on the top. I feel like I would have really liked to have had more grip where I could then grab in my pocket. Because yes, I'm going to get under here, but I prefer not to accidentally slide off the top. So having something aggressive here, I think, kind of makes sense. Now you can also see that the clips here are a little bit different. We've gone from a single directional clip to a bidirectional clip. There's good and bad about that. So this is going to be less likely to get caught on things when you're passing by, but this has slightly more versatility because it can be clipped onto a hat or other item from this front side. On the back negatives here, this is going to get caught on more things as you walk by. So that's something you should keep aware of. And then the next thing that we briefly talked about is USB Type-C versus micro USB. And I'm pretty sure I did not get one of these silicone covers in it, which I think is a pretty big deal personally, because losing that or having it damaged means it's no longer IPX8 waterproof. So that's a big deal to me, at least. So really, really well done. Now, there's one thing that I probably wouldn't have caught had I not reviewed the version 4, and that is the button. So if you look at version 4, you notice that the button is actually proud, making it much easier to accidentally activate, where version 5 has the crown flush with the button, making it far more difficult to activate. Well done, Thrunite. So if you have not purchased one of these two yet, the version 5 is a significant upgrade. It's also weirdly cheaper than this one right now. I don't know why. But anyway, version 5, fantastic. Love it. Everything they've done is a huge improvement. There is one thing, though, that is true for both that I would very much like to see fixed. And I've talked to the rep about it, but I think it's something they should consider. So notice that turbo and high, both of them only run just over 2 minutes on their relative respective outputs before dropping down to 600 lumens. What would be better, in my opinion, is something between 600 and 800 that stays on for a very long time and never diminishes for a high mode. So there's a much more significant difference between these two. I think you'll more likely to use the high mode if this was the case. As it stands, I'm probably going to end up using the low and the medium and the turbo the most, in addition to the Firefly, which is probably the one that I always use in the morning. So that is the one thing I'd like to see changed. I'd like to see this reach out to be whatever the maximum output it can while maintaining that output for as long as possible. That's what I like to see from the high. So that's my only real critique with these. Now let's bring in some other flashlights and move this out of the way. Now we're going to talk about comparisons to similar flashlights, similar functions. And I think it's relative. I mean, these are both big players in the flashlight world, so I think it's a reasonable comparison. Starting with price. So this is currently discontinued, so I just want to have it here for size. This is a much bigger 18650 flashlight than the Warrior Mini 2, but actually compared to a lot of other similar flashlights with the same power, it's actually not that dissimilar. In some cases, shorter. Now, when you put the strike bezel on it, it's going to make it even longer. But I gotta be honest, it doesn't really impact its carryability all that much. Now, if you look at where the clips line up, especially if you take this off, which I'm probably not going to keep in my pocket, right? It's actually shorter in the pocket, and the part that sticks out makes it much easier to grab onto when you need to pull it out quickly. So I really, really do like this flashlight. They also have pretty similar dimensions in that regard. What's not similar is price. This runs about $100, a little bit under, and this is running 75 at max and can be as low as $60, 61-ish. So big difference in that regard. But there's a bigger thing that is a difference between these two. Now, from user interface, they're pretty much a wash. They have very similar ways they function. The part that really separates this flashlight is the tail switches, okay? The one thing we don't talk about all that much is what happens to these things when you get them filled with dirt or sand or anything else. And can you rely on them after using them in those environments? Here's the problem with Olight's tail switches. The problem with the Olight tail switch is that the gap between these two the metal button and the outer metal shell is sand and dirt can get in there. And the moment it does, it stops working properly. Where a rubber button just doesn't have this problem. And it's also really easy to fix or repair if you wear it out. You can simply get a relatively common standard sized rubber button cover and simply replace it. So I think from a hard use standpoint, if you're planning on using your lights, you're also going to get more longevity from the Thrunite than you will from the Olight. Yes, the Olight is much smaller, which is why it's great for EDC. But I think for someone who's a true user of their flashlights, who are going to beat the daylights out of it, this is going to be superior. So really well done. They have actually knocked it out of the park. And something I will also mention here is that unlike the Olight, which has a proprietary battery and cannot take a standard 18650, as I will demonstrate, this one can. So any 18650 that is available can be used in this flashlight and can be charged in this flashlight without a secondary proprietary charging system. You can use any USB Type-C and all of a sudden you can charge your flashlight anywhere you go. I think that's a big deal, personally, and I think it will be for a lot of people. All right, I think I pretty much covered as much as I can here. Yes, there's still some great advantages to the Olight. I do carry it because it is so compact, but I cannot deny the advantages also of the version 5 of the BSS. The one thing I will mention and critique here is that I think they could have done a little bit better job making sure that this cap cover was flush. So in the very short time that I've carried it, I've opened it by accident a few times. So what I'm probably going to end up doing, because I can easily still use my fingernail to pull it out, is I'm actually going to trim this rubber part off so that it is as flush as possible and is less likely to actually pop out on me. So I don't need this extra tab sticking out when I can just grab it with my nail from any piece of rubber that's sticking out and just pull it out. So I want it to be as less likely to pop out as possible. Still, I'm very thankful that they added the extra silicone cover. That's it. I know it's a really long video, but I was hoping that I addressed everything in this that you would need to know if you're trying to make a decision on which flashlight to purchase. Now, there are plenty of other competitors to all of these flashlights out there, but this should give you a pretty good ballpark. So I really thank you for your time, and we'll talk again soon.